second, and the third setback complements the height of the Mather Tower. Is that white torpedo-looking building you see on your far left. Now you'll also notice how this building looks like a giant mirror, the tower. That's because it wants to reflect its neighboring buildings, but more importantly, it wants to reflect the energy of what matters the most. And in this situation, it's the river. Now this type of vibing or blur is simply known as contextualism. Contextualism understands what matters the most, and it's not the tower itself, it's the river. It never takes your attention away from nature. Now on your left, you're going to see this chess piece out of a Lincoln Bishop. That's going to be the Jewelers Building, built in 1926. Now the Jewelers Building is decked out in the style of the Beaux Art, which we will talk about more later. Now when this was built, it was during the time period of Al Capone. We had gangsters like in the streets of Chicago, and people were scared to go to the banks. So what they'll do is they'll drive their car to the Jewelers Building, park in a car elevator, take the car elevator to the top, and deposit the cash money and gold. Now speaking of Al Capone, that dome you see up there was once a legendary speakeasy. It was known as the Stratosphere Lounge. And in 2008, there was this giant robot named Sentinel. He joined the Decepticons to destroy the planet, so he went up there to plant the Doomsday device. Fortunately, Optimus Prime and the rest of the Autobots were able to stop him. I do a lot of pop culture references as well. Now on your right, you're going to see these two white corncob towers. It is called Marina City, completed in 1967. It is dubbed a city within a city. A city within a city. A what? Now today you go to any major city in the world, go to the corner store, pick up groceries, go to the gym, cafe, and all that jazz. But back in 1950s and 60s, that did not exist. Plus, it's post-World War II. Americans are flying to the suburbs, building the dream houses and making babies. Hence the baby boom generation. And this would cause a depression not only to Chicago, but to cities nationwide. At the time, Richard J. Daley had to police power and save Chicago by not losing suburbia. He did this by allowing the 3-acre apartment complex project to be built, known as Marina City. Now it is dubbed a city within a city for a reason. Like I said, today we can go to any major city in the world, go to the corner store, pick up groceries, go to the gym, cafe. Back in the 50s and 60s, that did not exist. So Marina solved its own issues by installing its own grocery store, cafe, swimming pool, gym, laundromat, dry cleaner, parking lot, and a dock so you can park your yacht. This would be a major game changer because from here on out, wherever you go in the world, and you see these cool high-rise inner city apartments and condos with all the amenities, Marina was the first to start that trend. Now on your left, you're going to see this building with a bunch of hashtag patterns on it. That's going to be the Leo Burnett building, built in 1989. Now this is a love letter to the first school, Chicago architecture, as it's giving throwback vibes, expressing the skeleton form, with the base, the shaft, and the capitol. Now if we were to time travel back to the late 1800s when skyscrapers first rising, it'll look similar to the Leo Burnett building. Now the Leo Burnett building is home to iconic commercials such as Tony the Tiger, Pillsbury Doughboy, and it inspired hit jingles such as Like a Good Neighbor. That all came from the Leo Burnett building. Now on your right, you're going to see this beautiful red brick earth tone color building with a green rooftop resembling a giant tree. That's going to be the Reed Murdoch Center, built in 1914. Now this is what Chicago used to look like back in the day when it was all industrial, but the buildings were very grimy and uninviting. Now we're going to talk about a style from Chicago known as Prairie Style. Prairie Style was brought out by legendary architect Frank Lloyd Wright. Although his work is not presented on the river, his influence is. And you see that with this beautiful red earth tone brick building. Now this is how the magic of Prairie works on us. Have you ever been stuck in traffic after work in the summertime during construction for more than 2 hours with other happy drivers just like you all, only saying nice things to each other, never honking, just to finally get to go home, relax, breathe, and home? That's the magic of Prairie doing its trick, helping you escape the chaos of the traffic of the city with its home sweet home serenity vibes. Now back then, all these types of buildings used to have a water tank on top, and it was an eyesore. Architect George Simmons coupled it with the clock tower, introducing a whole new way of beautifying these buildings. Now, on your right, you can see this tall glass building. That's going to be 300 LaSalle, completed in 2008. Now, at one point, this was the most environmentally friendly building on the planet, as it utilizes location to absorb all the sun for natural lighting and energy efficiency. Now, in order to prevent this building from overheating from so much sun exposure, what it actually did at one point was pull in water from the Chicago River to naturally cool it off. and in doing so, it would filter the water and return it back to the river. Now, when we think about architectural styles, think of it as a fashion. You can just tell what era is from what based on the looks. You see someone rocking a neon jacket with puffy shoulder pads, that's the 80s. You see someone rocking denim and baggy, that is the 90s. There is one style that stood the test of time, that's love and power, and that's Art Deco. Art Deco emerged during the 1920s and 30s with the roaring jazz era, Great Gatsby flapper vibes. And what better way to demonstrate your wealth and power than by going big or going home? And that's exactly what you're seeing right here on your right with this giant Art Deco mammoth known as Merchandise Mart, completed in 1930. Once home to the department store empire of Marshall Fields, would open its gates to the world. It can serve up to 20,000 clients on a daily basis. Each floor can sustain up to 6 football fields, and it still has its own active L trade known as Merchandise Mart. Now, when this building was bought out in 1956 for only $12 million by Joseph Kennedy, he wanted to honor the OGs of retail by giving us the Merchandise Mart Hall of Fame. It's these giant heads lurking at the grand entrance. You'll see retail OG legends such as Richard Sears, Aaron Montgomery Ward, Frank Winfield Woodward, and many, many more. Now, has anyone seen the hit TV show The Bear? If you go around the corner from Merchandise Mart, go a few blocks up north, you hit up a shop called Mr. Beef. Now, who here has seen the movie Fat Man Begins? You know the bridges lift up to separate Gotham from Narrows? That's this bridge right here. And you know Christopher Nolan was all about the practical and never about the computer. So just imagine that time we're jumping from one end onto the other. Now go ahead and get your phones out as we're entering the heart and soul of downtown Chicago known as World Point. Here's the north and south branch all beautiful the Chicago River. Don't forget the hashtag is the shoreline sightseeing. Do see more of Chicago. They don't pay to see it. Now up ahead you're going to see this giant hot looking building. That's going to be World Point, completed in 2017. Now this is an awesome example of contemporary architecture. You notice the bottom there's just a cool looking arch. Keep looking more down, you see a bunch of ventilation vents. That's because there's so much railroad action happening underneath. They couldn't build a solid base. So what they did was they bent the foundation to an arch. It's very similar when you're going camping to a music festival, such as Bonnaroo or Electric Forest. You know how you're setting up your tent? That's exactly what's happening here. So just imagine this being one giant tent pole that's holding up this hot tamale. Now, as we go around the bend up north, you will eventually see a pinkish building. That is going to be the Fulton House, built in 1898. Now, this pink building you're about to see is indeed the oldest building on the Chicago River. Now, back then, all those doors and windows did not exist. That's because it was once a giant freezer to store all the meats. You see, back in the late 1800s and early 1900s, Chicago was the hog butcher capital of the world, and they would utilize buildings like the pink one to store all the meats. Now, fast forward 100 years later into the 1980s, suddenly buildings that were built like tanks like this were being bulldozed for the postmodern world, such as malls and movie theaters. And if you're like me from Chicago in the 80s, you know that's all we did. We hung out at malls and movie theaters, especially after watching the hit musical Beat Street. We'd be out there breakdancing trying to be like Crazy Legs. Now, leave it to an architect named Harry Weese, who's a very interesting character, but he loved using the influence of architecture to make the world a better place. You see, when these buildings were being knocked down in the 80s all over America, all the dust, lead, and asbestos is in the atmosphere, not for days, but for months. It's really bad for the environment. So he wanted to save these buildings and repurpose them. So him and his crew built a 4 feet of concrete wall to add in all the doors and windows. Now, because it was once a giant freezer, they had to thaw out all the ice. So it took about 6 months. And when they got to the core walls, they discovered that it was full of cork and horsehair, a method of insulation back in the day. But leading to Chicago to start a whole new trend. Because when you see buildings like the pink one on your left, you see music venues, breweries, loft apartments and condominiums, offices for the new high-tech company, that vintage warehouse district, that all started